All right, everyone, it's time to talk about Amazon censorship and how, in my mind, I know the on-the-ground effects are basically the same, but in my mind, psychologically, them censoring things is worse than like when we see it from Facebook or even like a YouTube or something, and I'll tell you exactly why. There's something about basically being the equivalent of digital book burning that in my mind is worse morally, traditionally, in every possible way, and pragmatically too, than like banning someone off a site. It's like social media, like a Facebook or something, which I know Facebook is basically vestigial now anyway. If they're using a Zuckerberg service, they're using Instagram at this point. But I mean, you get banned there. Number one, you can get around it. It's not a big problem. Number two, there are actual competitors to it, and again, including Zuckerberg's other site, that exists. But there's really no alternative for publishing on demand. Amazon has basically monopolistic control when it comes to US publishing. And it has a huge amount of control of overall e-commerce, although it has more competitors there. You've got eBay, you've got Etsy, you've got Alibaba, a couple of others, a lot of app-based stuff now. In fact, some of these sites, you can't even do anything on them unless you are using a smartphone. It's a tragic trend on the internet that is literally going to force me to buy a smartphone in order to conduct e-commerce, because I can think of a time in which a site like Amazon no longer accepts, like, no longer has the architecture to support like people who are trying to connect via computer for all intents and purposes, and that'd be terrible. I think it's worse when Amazon is doing something like this, though. But number one, because of that monopolistic control, that's more the pragmatic end. But number two, the shock value of book banning. The idea of book burning in general is a very old trope. Whereas the idea of getting banned off of a website, that's relatively new because there was no public internet before the 90s. Most people only started joining a decade thereafter. And even until like the last half decade, social media and certainly the mobile presence, not nearly as much. But book burning's been around for a long time, and it's like I can remember stuff like this. Like let me give an example. There's this one communist, self-proclaimed communist, that keeps doing the same fucking shit. He's done it 3 times now on Twitter. He DMs me and starts talking about how he's gonna flag my shit down, how I'm a Nazi, and because he read it, I guess, on BuzzFeed or whatever, and how he's gonna try to flag my material down and stuff. And he brought up in the most recent, and then he blocks me when I respond usually. And I just tell him, like, you don't know anything about my work, fuck off, basically. Because, you know, trust me, I'm making enough money for these sites that they're not going to ban me lightly. Let's put it that way. I don't do anything wrong. Like, my shit on Amazon is not edgy at all. Like, there's almost no political content there. It's a bunch of shit from the 1500s. But he brought up this one particular work by King James, no less, the same one that wrote Demonology. He wrote a work on tobacco. Now, because of his ignorance, he hadn't read the book. He thought this was a pro-tobacco tract. Of course, promotion of tobacco is not allowed on Amazon. It's actually one of the most famous anti-tobacco manifestos ever written. It's specifically, it talks about like, oh, this stinking malice, and it causes people's teeth to rot, makes them indolent and lazy. It's a scourge upon the English people, and we must remove it in the name of Christ. Like stuff like that. And it's actually like, it's better than demonology. Like, it was more helpful than demonology. Demonology killed a lot of people and helped to start, you know, various witch trials. Whereas his anti-tobacco tract probably saved millions of lives. So I guess he redeemed himself in the eyes of his Lord or something. But I mean, here he is. He's threatening to, like, you know, flag my shit on Amazon. I'm not worried because, again, it's well within TOS, like, in every way. Not even political. Well, technically it is political. It's just, you know, from centuries ago. So it doesn't really matter anymore. King James, the guide to vaping, the guide to smoking cessation. Now, it'd be funny, but it reminded me of, when I sort of encounter this stuff, it reminds me of the kind of shit that we went through, like when the Harry Potter books were big. You remember, you know, some of you probably do, when the Harry Potter books were first, like, coming out, and they're like the biggest thing ever. There's like signs for Harry Potter everywhere, and fucking, I mean, the obsession was insane. It was like, you know, any fad on steroids. Basically, Harry Potter and Pokemon, the big ones from, you know, the last few decades. You remember Pogs? Yeah, I didn't think so. But people were trying to get these books banned in, like, libraries and schools. They didn't want kids to bring them into school. They didn't want to offer them in the library. And by and large, the censorship failed. But the thing is, if you asked these people, well, did you read the book? Because they were saying, well, the witchcraft in them is going to make our kids Satanists or some dumb shit. Did you read it? Do you know anything about, the book? Do you even know more? Do you know more than what someone else told you about the book, like your minister? No, but it's evil, it's devilish and stuff. I knew kids that weren't allowed to read Harry Potter, and I'm like, I didn't understand, because I'm like, well, I'm reading it. What are you talking about? It's going to promote witchcraft. It's a fucking book. It's not real. The kind of wizardry in this book does not exist. It does have some actual occult tropes. I made a video in the occult series, actually, about the real occultism in the Harry Potter series. There are some overlapping features, but it's not promulgating it. It's certainly not teaching people how to make actual, like, potions and stuff like that. It's like, go into chemistry, kids. It'll be more worth your time than studying that sort of thing. Or at the very least, study alchemy. And I don't mean like Nicholas Flamel isn't all that, so don't worry too much about it. But it is digital book burning. When Amazon specifically delves into it, because of that monopolistic control that it exercises, I think it's like, what, 60 or 70% of all U.S. publishing or some crazy shit. It's like half of all paperbacks sold are Amazon issued in some way, shape, or form. And I would say at that point, the government must intervene if a site with that much power is attempting to censor. It's not even like, it's not like Twitter, like, it's got viable competitors. Gab does exist. It's really not that much more of an instant social platform than, you would say, a YouTube or certainly a Facebook or Instagram or whatever. So as competitors, there's nobody who competes with Amazon with publishing on demand, though. It's like I had looked at other publishing on-demand services. All of them require, you would have to order your books and ship them out yourself, or use a third-party warehousing service or something and pay money, whereas Amazon basically handles everything other than the construction and processing to begin with. You're writing a book, you're editing a book, whatever, you formatted it, you've made it, saleable basically, and you send the files in. Everything else is handled by Amazon. No problem. And so it's more concerning. And the other part of it, of course, is that, yes, I make a great deal of money on Amazon. It's more than I make on, like, Patreon or something. So looking at the specter of them delving into cracking down on content, yeah, absolutely, it's a concern. Absolutely. Even if I don't think my content's likely to be, hit because it's not political, it doesn't mean it can't be. It doesn't mean that the paradigm doesn't shift 5 years later it gets banned. Well, I'd kind of like to keep selling my books. It's a little bit of an ego boost to have, like, my name on, stuff that's out there. It is pretty cool to be sitting on a bookshelf somewhere. It's like maybe it's a little bit of an egregore or something. I don't know. But yeah, I think Amazon should take the moral high ground and refuse to continue and say, well, just to Bezos, here, come out and use an excuse, really old excuse, to say, oh, well, we heard people's concerns. Now, of course, you're not going to be able to pony up any of those because there probably aren't that many. There are more soccer moms than there are libertarian activists. But say, like, well, we heard people's concerns and we're right. We're repledging ourselves to not censor. We understand people get offended or whatever, and we do have some terms of service, but we're not going to go out of our way to, like, do what these other sites are doing. Amazon will make so much more money long term if they do that. And it's like, again, because you have no competitors, what are you so afraid of? You can continue to offer that stuff and not allow it to end up forming competitors. Don't you make Twitter's mistake and then Gab starts to form, and basically that's the lesson to be learned. That's about all. Peace out.